Hello friends. Thought a lot about today's lesson, and I thought that today we might call this lesson Bluegrass Listening rather than Bluegrass Playing, because what I want to teach you is how to listen and recognize in various songs almost the chord progression and hear it in your head rather than learning just by rote chords off a piece of paper. You need to be able to recognize as you go through a song or as you're listening and jamming with other people, if they're playing a song traditionally in bluegrass where it follows what we call the 1-4-5 pattern, where the root note is perhaps a G and then G, A, B, C is the next one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is the G, G, A, B, C is the 4. And then the 5 would be the D, G, A, B, C, D. So a song such as Sitting on Top of the World, for instance, is 1, 4, 5. 'Twas in the spring, one sunny day, my good girl left me, yeah, she's gone away. Now she's gone, I don't worry, I'm sitting on top of the world. Now granted, there was an E minor in there, but generally it's the 1, 4, 5. And of course, I'll talk about transition notes later on too, or transition chords later on too, because that's another important part of this process. So like we said, a song like Sitting on Top of the World is certainly in G, C, and D, the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords. But then many other songs traditionally are, for instance, in the key of A, which I can easily achieve by putting the capo on the 2nd fret. Then when I play the familiar patterns of G, C, and D, I'm actually playing the chord of A, the chord of D, because C up 2 frets higher is a D, and then the 5 chord, which would have been a D, 2 frets higher, is the E, which is the same as if I were uncapoed and playing E. Now, I spent many years going against the grain and not using a capo and learning the chords all over the neck, and that's a valuable exercise, knowing that you can play an A chord there, or many people play it with 3 fingers, but another piece of this exercise is the fact that being able to play the chords in different finger structures so that you leave yourself additional fingers available for like noodling around, noodling where you just sort of jamming around different notes. So for instance, when I play the A chord, I don't play the 3 fingers in an A chord like that. I always play the A chord just with the pad of this finger here. And that leaves me 3 other fingers to do with what I will, right? So I can go. And one of my favorite chords that I play on the A is to put the pinky up here in the high A. This is E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So this is the A note, just like this is the A note. Those are A's. So by playing the A with just the pad of the finger, I've got other fingers available, including the pinky, which you'll notice in many of the songs that I've written, I play the A with the octave A up there, the 8th note, so I call it an A8. Or sometimes I even will go back and forth to it's a nice chord, and you couldn't easily do it if you're jamming all those fingers in there to play the A. The closest you can get is an A suspended in there, and I guess you could get that one, but then you're going to choke off this finger here because you have to stretch so far to get to it. It just doesn't sound good. So by playing it that way there, I get the full A chord. And of course, in doing so, I lay this finger all the way across all 4 strings, but I'm not playing that high E string anyways. My finger is covering that note there. So strength-wise, to hold that A chord and play that octave A, I'm really laying this finger across all 4 strings, but you're never going to hear this fret because this fret takes over. This is the one that I'm plucking. So strength-wise, I've got that finger going across all frets. Excuse me. So the idea being the 1-4-5 pattern, bluegrass pattern in the key of A, could be A, D, E, A, D, E. But if I throw a capo on the 2nd fret, I can play the familiar pattern of G, C, D. And I'm really playing A, D, E. And a lot of people play that or use that method for a couple reasons. Hopefully, or I guess beginners players would do it because they're only familiar with playing the G, fingering the G, C, and D chords. And that easily allows them to move all over the neck and play the G, C, and D chords with the 1-4-5 pattern just by moving the capo around the neck. And additionally, any of the little bluegrass licks that somebody may have learned, like they can play it because they're capoed on the 2nd fret in the key of A, instead of going. I can achieve the same thing, but I've got to hit so many more frets to achieve that phrase, which I can do, and an experienced picker would know how to do that. Versus when I'm capoed, playing my familiar G pattern, I can just using some of those open strings to accomplish instead of having to finger so many notes and frets. So the A scale, instead of, I don't even know my A scale. Yes, I could spend hours and hours learning the A scale, or I could just throw the capo on and learn the G scale. Now, some of the practice I've learned along the way is knowing that you can play, for instance, when I'm playing the key of G, I want to go, I can do an open B and those 3 strings, right? But I just can't get speed on that going. Instead I can go, this string here is the same as the B string open, right? I can go much faster using that B note there on that string rather than playing the open B string. So that's another practice where it may be beneficial not to have the capo on, but also just learning various chords and notes around the neck so that you can gain speed, and as you're picking out some leads and such, you know that there are notes that you don't always have to play the open strings, as well as voicings around the neck, because when I play the G chord here, I can just play it here also, and it's got a different voicing to it. If I just play the upper strings to it, it's got a different voice to it, right? So and even if I throw down that finger there, if it were in tune, it's a little bit high, but and something else I've noticed later in life, I always poo-pooed the people that use capos to play in the key of A. I said, well, I can play in the key of A just by using the right chords on my neck. But what I've found, in perhaps a better reason for using the capo rather than just cheating and playing those familiar G, C, and D patterns, is the fact that by using the capo on the 2nd fret or anywhere else you put it on the neck, you've shortened up the strings on the guitar, and the shorter strings are tighter, and they've got more punch and more impact to when you play. Versus if I play the same thing in the natural key of A, because the strings are so long and vibrating, you just sort of get a loose feeling to it. And it's just not as tight as if I had played it with the capo in the key of A, but by fingering the G chord. Actually approach it and attack it stronger, and it gives more punch to the song because you're capoed up 2 frets and playing the A chord like that. Now certainly there's other methods. You can go to 4 frets and probably play an F. Somebody was talking to me the other day about playing an E chord. You can do the 2nd fret and play a D, or I can do the 4th fret and play a C. So I'm playing an E right there, which is the same as if I had uncapoed and played it, but just such a long string on that open E like that. If I were certainly doing any fast bluegrass leads, I just can't do them fast enough there, whereas if I capo on the 4th fret and play in the C position, it's a tighter sound to the guitar, and it's got more punch to it just because it's a shorter string, and therefore it's got more tension on it. So you can use that to your advantage with the capo, not only because you're just learning chords and you can play the familiar G, C, and D patterns, but also to achieve different voicings around the neck and to actually give the song more punch and drive, just because you're playing, for all intents and purposes, right, you're barring across there with the capo and you're playing a C shape. Same thing. So in our study of chords and patterns around the neck, I'm concentrating on bluegrass just because it's traditionally known as the playing in the keys of 1, 4, and 5, whether that be G, C, and D, or A, D, and E. And a lot of bluegrass guys actually play in the key of B, just because they have high voices. And the key of B. So B is the root chord. B, C, D, E is the 4 chord. And F sharp becomes the 5 chord. And that brings you back around to B. Of course, represented with the capo, G up 2 frets is A, up 2 more frets is B. So if I put the capo on the B root and play my G shape chord, I'm really playing a B. And if I do this, I'm playing that E that we talked about before, because I'm on the 4th fret and we're playing the C chord. So C, D, E. 2 frets is a full step, right? So G, full step makes it A, another full step makes it B. So B, E, and my 5 chord, my 1/4, my 5 chord looks like a D, but because I'm capoed up on the 4th fret, it's actually an F sharp. So my root template for in the key of B is the 1 chord is B, the 4 chord is E, and the 5 chord is F sharp. And again, because I'm capoed high up the neck and the strings are shorter, I get a nice punch to the sound of the guitar. Versus if I were not capoed and had to play the B this way, and the E, the F sharp. It's just such long strings, and the low voicing just doesn't bode well for the bluegrass sound. You want the nice punchy sounds, that's why. Nice punchy sound to play in B, just by capoing there, and you get the 1, 4, and 5. Now I'm going to talk about another piece of what I have sort of alluded to as you heard playing there, is when you're listening to songs, and again I go back to the bluegrass genre just because it's so familiar with most of the songs in the key, the pattern of 1, 4, and 5, but when you listen to a song, how do you know where the root note is, and therefore where the 4 chord is, and therefore what the 5 chord is? You get a feeling for it. I want you to get a feeling for it, that if I'm playing back in the key of G, there are certain chords that, to me, I call them transition chords. I'm sure many people do. But if I were to play in the key of G, 'twas in the spring, one sunny day, my good girl left me. It would transition to the 4 chord there, and it's got some movement to it, and then it's a semi-transition chord because you want to bring, knowing that the key is G, the 4 chord has a little bit of movement to it, but it wants to resolve itself back to the G. And then when it finally gets to the D chord, which is the 5, sitting on top of the world. As I'm finishing off that phrase, I'm on the 5 chord, and particularly with the D, and it's got the root note, because you can't leave that bottom E open on a D chord, right? It just sounds terrible. So you cover it with your thumb to be an F sharp. So the D with an F sharp bass, which resolves you back to the G. Now she's gone, but I don't worry. Listen how the lyrics go. I'm sitting on top of the world. When you're singing the against a D, which is the, or the world. So sitting on top of the world. If you were to play that D and maintain the D while somebody's, oh, the world, it just wants to resolve, doesn't it? Oh, the once you understand where the root chord of a song is, then the 4 chord will be somewhat dissonant, and the 5 chord will be so dissonant that it just wants to resolve back to the 1 chord. And so, as I'm listening to, I was thinking, before I started taping this, I was thinking about another song that we do called Darling Say Won't You Be Mine, which is actually in the key of A. So as I listen to that song, I'm a beginning bluegrass player. I don't know what key the song's in. Let me find an A here for you. Can't you hear the night bird crying? Can't you hear the lonesome dove? Now that's A, and the 4 chord was the D. Sure, I know that because I've learned the song, but if I didn't, and I'm sitting there as a new player trying to jam along with other people, and I didn't notice that nobody called out that they're in A. I didn't notice they put their capos, or maybe some people actually playing it like this with the regular A and the regular D, and you don't see their fingers. You think they're playing bluegrass, G, C, and D, right? And it just doesn't sound right if you're playing the G chord against a song that is in the key of A. Can't you hear the night bird crying? Can't you hear the lonesome dove? It absolutely sounds terrible, right? So, excuse me, you've got to be able to learn to listen to a song more so than just play the chords. Listen to, maybe in the background, you're silently playing a G so that it doesn't bother whoever's playing the lead chords. Boy, that G just doesn't sound right. I hear him go, can't you hear? Oh, there it is. Once you sort of factor out that pitch in your brains, oh, they're playing in the key of A, then I make my decision. I either play open with the key of A, or I put my capo up on the 2nd fret and play in what looks to me like the key of G, but fingering the G pattern in the key of A. Can't you hear the night bird crying? Can't you hear the lonesome dove saying, won't you come back, darling, to the old one you love? So whatever key you're in, and whether you play with a capo or not, I'd like you to spend some time listening to songs, perhaps a CD of a song or something in your own living room with your own guitar, rather than at the jam, and start playing the chords that you know. I know a D chord, I know a C chord, I know a G chord. Most men sing bluegrass songs in the key of G, A, or even B if they got a higher voice. Women traditionally sing bluegrass songs in the key of C. It just fits their voices better. So you will find that if you're playing along with a woman singing lead, she may ask for the song to be played in the key of C. And so you have to be familiar with the 1, 4, 5 in the key of C, which is going to be C, and then C, D, E, F would be the 4 chord. So C is your 1 chord, F is your 4 chord, and G is your 5 chord, C, D, E, F, G. C, F, G. And I'll strain my voice, but I'll try to do an example of if she were singing Sitting on Top of the World in the key of C. Can't you? No. 'Twas in the spring, one sunny day, my good girl left me, now she's gone away. Now she's gone, I don't worry, 'cause I'm sitting on top of the world. So the key of C with a 1, 4, and 5. C, F, and G. And you just have to be familiar with playing some of those progressions based on the root chord. And as you see, that particular song, when I was in G, it had an E minor in the chorus. or even the turnaround, as you would call it. And that's what's called the relative minor. So if I'm in G, the relative minor to the G is E minor. It's what? It's three notes down. G, F, E. I'm talking about full chords now, not the F sharp and this and that. So G to an F to an E. Now E note, E chord would be this, but it's a relative minor chord. So if a G goes to the E minor and back to the G. Now she's gone, I don't worry, 'cause I'm sitting on top of the world. Whereas if I were in C, like the woman was singing it, the relative minor to the C root chord is going to be the A minor. So again, it's C, B, A. So it's the third chord down from it, and it's minor. Not the A major, but the A minor. So C, go, I don't worry, 'cause I'm sitting on top of the world. Key of A. Now she's gone, and I don't worry. F sharp minor is the relative minor to A. So A, G sharp, F sharp. And again, I'm playing it minor. Not very well, but I'm playing it in minor. So if you're playing the key of A, you need to know not only the 1, 4, 5, which is A, D, E, and then back to the 1, and the relative minor to that is going to be 2 full chords down, which is going to be down to the F sharp, and it's minor. So that's another thing there. And then I guess F sharp minor, or the relative minor, isn't really a turnaround so much, but it's just another set of chords that you would need to know based on any one of the patterns we did, the G chord, the C root chord, or the A root chord. One thing I was just going to tell you is, some of the old Flat and Scruggs tunes, by the way. What other chords do you need to know to carry your weight in a bluegrass jam? Well, I know the 1, 4, 5 in G, right? G, C, and D. I even know the relative minor, E minor. Cool. But, for instance, like Earl's Breakdown, which is a banjo song, starts, and there's other bluegrass songs by Flat and Scruggs, for instance. They had the G, and then it goes to the A, and then to the C, D, and a G. So it's what we call the 2 chord. Because if this is my 1 chord, G, 1, 4, 5, right? G, C, and D. 1 is a G there. Therefore, the next full chord up is an A. That's a 2 chord. I can't think of an example right now. So it's sort of a progression where I did the 1, then the 2, and then the 5. And then sometimes even the pattern will go 1, 2, 5, and then 1, 4, 5. So you'll see various things like that. I guess one that comes to mind is Old Home Place. What have they done? Actually, the chorus starts on the 5. What have they done to the old home place? Then it goes up to the 2. Why did they tear it down? Back to the 5. And then you're back into the regular pattern. Why did I leave my plow in the field and look for a job in the town? Again, not a great example because it has that B7 in there, which is an odd chord. But you see the rest of the chords were 1, 4, 5, And then when we started the chorus on the 5, you went to the 1, to the 2, which is an A, did they tear it down, back to the 5, which is a D. And why did I leave my plow in the field, 1 and 4 and 1, and look for a job in the town. That's a very familiar bluegrass chorus ending also. To go to the 1, 4, 1, and then 1, 5, 1. So I think the more, what I'd like to express in this lesson here is the more you listen to bluegrass songs, and certainly you know the chords from your books or your studies, but how do you fit the chords in, and can I recognize those chords as I'm listening to a song, rather than blindly looking at a sheet of paper and oh, now I'm supposed to play the C chord, now I'm supposed to play the D chord, with no bearing on that. I want you to have bearing on that. I want you to know and feel when it's appropriate, because you're hearing the chord changes in your mind, and the chord changes you're hearing might spur you to play either the 4 or the 5. My music teacher in high school always called it recognizing the 4 chord. Based on the 1 chord being a G, it was here comes the bride. I'm singing it wrong, I'm sorry about that. Is here comes the bride, 1, 4, 4, 4. Here comes the bride, in the key of G, recognizing or hearing that change between the 1 chord and the 4 chord. It's as if you've heard somebody singing Here Comes the Bride. Here comes the bride, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here comes the bride. Versus hearing the 5 chord is more like twinkle, 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 little lamb, twinkle, twinkle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, twinkle, twinkle, versus here comes the bride, twinkle, twinkle, here comes the bride. So the 1 and 4 is as if you're doing Here Comes the Bride, and the transition from 1 to 5 is as if you're doing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Just a sort of a simplistic way to think about it.